Elizabeth's time frame. We also have a working kitchen with things that most of you have probably never eaten before and probably never want to eat, given some of the smells coming from the kitchen. We have a working forge, but not a weaponsmithy. This is a village forge, so they make nails, they make tools, they make hairpins, we also have the bell. Every village has one, and the ladies are really glad that we do, because you're going to get worn out with childbirth, so if he's off entertaining himself with someone else, that works for us. So we are a full village. Our big event is, of course, the Renaissance Fair up in Irwindale. And we are there for 7 full weekends, open to the public, and for 5 full weekends building the village, and then one day tearing it down. The things that are on the table are things that we use, things that we've made, things that, and several of you were looking at it earlier, please come up and touch them. They get washed, get washed again, and washed again, and washed again, because working the Renaissance Fair, you get filthy. Think of 10,000 people who do not know how to pick up their feet, shuffling through the dust. So you have that dust layer right about up to here, which means it settles on everything, in everything. It's a real treat to have a cup of tea and not have to have a cup cover over the top of it, so that the large chunks don't fall into the cup. I'd like to explain what's on the table, but if you guys have questions about Ren Fair in general and the Elizabethan period in particular, please holler. I'm going to start on that side of the table, so Shirley, I don't know if you want to, oh, never mind, my lovely assistant. Josh is also the administrator. He's the guild master for the St. Ives, which means that he's actually in charge of all of that. It's like herding cats. The fabric that's on the stretcher bars, oh, got to tell you about stretcher bars, because I'm in envy of the framework that you guys can use for your needlepoint. I can't, it's not period. The stretcher bars, okay, the fabric, go ahead and wander it through the tables if you will, so they can actually see the fabric. And I'll take the pillow. So you'll notice that the design is actually on the fabric. It's woven in a jacquard weave, and it is as boring as can be. Elizabethans didn't have much entertainment, but they liked color. Not as bad as the Germans. The Germans like color too, and they've never seen a color combination they didn't like. Which is why when you come to the Ren Fair and you see the Germans, they have such colorful clothing. Now, that fabric is the same fabric that we used, that my girlfriend Katie, or Francesca, used for her pillow. I'm sure no one here in this room understands anything about sibling rivalry, or that, well, this is what I did, what are you going to do? So, Francesca and I bonded over French knots. She's left-handed. Nobody could explain to her how to do a French knot so that she understood it. I'm ambidextrous. We sat down while the guys were busy building, and I took a hunk of thread and a needle, and in 10 minutes she was doing absolutely beautiful French knots. And that's how we formed our friendship. This fabric is also the same. It started out as a pillow, but every time I had to explain what I had done with it, I had to pop up off of my cushion, so I just turned it into a table runner. It saves me a lot of up and down. But what happened was Francesca did this beautiful pillow in these lovely cool yarns, and I fell in love with it. Yeah. Okay, Francesca is 10 years younger than I am, so she's my little sister. She'll tell you she handed me the fabric. I'll tell you she threw it at me. And she said, see what you can do. Challenge accepted. So, as you can see there, I'm using pearl cottons. Now I will probably take all of that out and soak the fabric in OxyClean unless somebody else has a better suggestion to get some of that foxing out of it. I'm not real worried that the fabric is a little bit stained because it's going to be a table topper for use at fair. And the only thing that's gonna happen is it's gonna get thrown in the wash at the end of the 7 days or the 7 weekends because it's gonna be filthy. And I actually wash the table toppers and things every weekend. Instead of 4 loads of laundry for the week, I usually end up with 7 or 8 during fair season. So you can see that one's been washed and washed and washed. But that's what we do. We use the stuff that we make. You can see on Josh's cuffs, and we'll pass around this one as well. This is black work. This is a shirt that I made for Josh. And it's clean. I did the laundry after fair. That laundry anyway. If the black work traditionally is two-sided and it, okay. If it's on a cuff, if it's on a collar, I don't care. Nobody's gonna see it. And there is something that I learned a long time ago about doing stuff for fair. When I learned to do embroidery 52 years ago, I'm 59, so I am a true child of the 60s. I was born in 1960. My older sisters taught me how to do embroidery, and so by 1970, everything I owned, jeans, those cambric work shirts that my mother deplored that I wore. She despaired of ever getting me into a dress. And now look, she didn't like this kind of dress either, but everything I owned, I had embroidery on. So I was very accustomed to wearing my work. But when I was taught to do it, I was taught not to tie knots. And that's wonderful if it's going up on a wall or behind glass. But about the 4th time it gets washed and something catches in the wash on that one thread, the next thing you know, you have flags because your embroidery is coming apart. I tie knots. I try and make them pretty discreet on the back of things, and you can see on the back of this, there's lots of knots. This is a sampler. This is kind of fun. This started life as a Charles Craft bread cover. Possibly the best invention for the historical recreator ever known. They don't ravel. They're the right size to, well, this one's a little bit big for that, but to keep the stuff out of your drink. Now, his cup is a little bit tall, so this works. But you notice that there are grommets in the corners. There are the extra large eyelets in the back, underneath the blanket stitching. We have to couch our grommets because grommets were not period. Holes in things were very period, not this kind of hole, but this kind of hole. What we've also found over the years is that people have a tendency to think that these are free.
So you need to anchor them down so they don't disappear.
So we tie them to the basket that they are covering.
Yeah.
Especially if you're distracted. Oh, look over there. Right?
Or yes, or we're on what we affectionately call walkies to do shoppies.
Yeah.
Not a good thing. Especially if you know, okay, it's the big Ren Fair is right about tax return time. So going shopping can be dangerous to my health, or at least to my budget. But that's what we use this kind of thing for. Anything that you need to cover. This one, I'll let you walk this one around. Again, Francesca and I, we actually are really very fond of each other.
Yeah.
When I told the ladies of my guild what I was coming to do, they went, "Oh, you gotta take this, and you gotta take that, and you gotta remember this, and you, are you writing stuff down for me guys?" So no, they just handed me all the stuff. So Francesca did the black work, and that is a baby Afghan. And now you'll notice there's some flags, because it kept getting washed, because it kept getting filthy. And so I went ahead and stitched around the perimeter, and I'm gonna have to do that again, because it's still rattling. But that's the kind of thing that we do, and I think that her black work on that is actually reversible. I'm not sure. But she just, you know, she's like us. She sits down and she's watching TV, or not watching TV, listening to TV, or listening to music, or just kind of, you know, chilling for the day. And so this is the kind of stuff that we do. We also, I could talk for hours and hours and hours on the stuff that we do at the Ren Fair. I do want to introduce you to two very special people. Somebody asked me, because, you know, Shirley says I've done Comic-Con and I'm a hospitality coordinator. This was my 45th, 44th year with Comic-Con. And working full-time and raising children and doing Ren Fair. I've been with the Ren Fair 26 years, and I've done Viking reenactment for 45 years. Let me tell you, the Vikings are a little uncomfortable. Now, with that being said, the corset that I have on is incredibly comfortable. And the only thing that I would have trouble doing is scrubbing a floor. But at my station, that's what my apprentices are for. I have to introduce you to Jelly and to Bean. I do Ren Fair, and I demo all day long, and usually in front of my spinning wheel, though this year I was doing needlepoint, or in my century, canvas work. And when I say my century, I spend a lot of time in the 16th century. The only thing I really enjoy about the 21st is hot showers and flush toilets. But I had two little girls come up to me, and they were fascinated by watching me spin, and fascinated to learn about fibers because they crochet. I'm like, that's great. Crocheting is not a period craft. Otherwise, I'd have enough Afghans done by the end of fair. Crocheting won't hit. It is being done in my time period, but it's being done by Belgian nuns, and there is no way I can pass for a Belgian nun. It doesn't hit my island for at least another 70 years after the reign of Elizabeth. So, great. I mean, these two little girls, and I have no idea their names, and that's probably okay, because, you know, the whole stranger danger thing. Talked to me for at least a half hour, and they were just fascinated with the whole thing. And they asked me, they saw I have a little crocheted sheep and a little crocheted hedgehog, and they asked me if I liked any other animals, and I told them that I liked bunnies. 3 weeks later, they came walking in to the front gate of fair with Jelly, and this was done by the 8-year-old. And Bean, I named them. That was done by the 5-year-old. And the mom told me, she says, the 5-year-old has a tendency, because she's got the attention span of a modern 5-year-old, that she's lucky she gets 2 stitches in. She kept coming back to this because she had to do this for the nice bunny lady. So Jelly and Bean go with me wherever I'm going. And I'm hoping at some point in time that the ladies come back so that they can see that Jelly and Bean are still with me. I believe Dad was in the Navy and they were not out at fair this year, so I would imagine that Dad has been stationed somewhere else other than Southern California. But we get people who come back. 20 years ago, I came to the fair and you were sitting here doing this. You know, I do actually go home. I do, you know, up until 2 years ago, I did work full-time. So we have a lot of fun. We do a lot of things. But something that I found at the Ren Fair, and I'm sure that you found here in your own guilds, is a shared passion. I didn't know how to spin when I started doing the Ren Fair. I knew how to crochet, and I knew how to cross stitch. I didn't know how to do black work. I didn't know how to weave. I didn't know, now, the weaving, you see the little trim on the doll's dress? That's all hand woven. The trim here, the trim on Josh's clothes, that's all hand woven. It's all hand woven. On the loom that he built for me, because you can't buy that kind of thing at Walmart. And if I want it to be a period, something that I can do out at fair, it can't be plastic either. So this year at fair, I thought, what can I do with all of the hand spun that I've been spinning? So I decided I'd demo canvas work. We already have a spinner. Granted, he's kind of grumpy and doesn't like to talk to people, but that's okay. So I took my hand spun and I'm doing my needlepoint with it. I have plenty. I like to spin.
Do they have 18 count in the Mississippi of time?
They had as fine as a count as you wanted to weave it.
Oh, really?
You would weave, now, the person that I know of in that time period who did absolutely exquisite petty point and fine canvas work was Mary Queen of Scots. They still have examples of her needlework on display. It's just like the Bible cover that Queen Elizabeth made for Catherine Howard? Yes, Elizabeth R., the first.
No, Catherine Parr.
Oh, Catherine Parr, thank you. See? But it just, there were so many people who said, oh, you want to learn that? Okay. So it's been a completely enriching, and what I found is what I do with the young ones that are coming in, young ones, some of them are older than I, but Shirley asked us to wear what we would normally wear at the Ren Fair, partly to show off the work, and partly because these are our clothes. They're not costumes. Now, do I use a washboard and wash them appropriately? No. I throw them in the washer. And if they're linen, I throw them in the dryer.
So you've got an underskirt, you've got, and then you've got the outer skirt, and then you've got, you've got bloomers.
Well, no, these are leggings. My
Yeah.
bloomers finally gave the ghost up about 15 years ago.
Okay, but in that era, you would have had bloomers or a petticoat?
You would have had some sort of hosen or something.
Right,
This is cold.
right, it's England.
Yeah,
Even,
now,
even in the summer, you're lucky if it hits 70.
it wouldn't have, not back
Yeah,
then. They were
yeah.
just coming out of an ice age in that time frame. Think in terms of their latitude
Yeah,
is approximately 10 degrees colder on any given day than ours is right now.
Right.
And back then, it was about 20 degrees colder than it is now. So in April, you were lucky if it was 50 degrees. You wore what you could wear. Up on top, I have 5 layers.
oh my
Do you have
God.
fur? Is that real fur?
Now, yes, this is real fur, this is Fred. He's a
So,
he's a
so
chinchilla.
you've got a chemise.
I
and-
have a cotton shirt on,
Okay, and then you've got a shirt, and then you've got that.
and I've got my corset on,
Oh, okay, there's your corset.
and it's tent canvas on the inside, and it's silk on the outside.
Did you make that corset as well?
No, I bought that from someone who I do not recommend anymore. No, it's because of her business practices, not because of the quality of the corset. Unfortunately, the corset's really nice, but her business practices suck.
So,
And then I have 2 layers of linen.
and then buttons were, what were the kinds of buttons back then?
Buttons were metal shank buttons. They were not buttons, where's the out? They were not normally buttons like this, but go ahead and show 'em.
Could you make like a Dorset button? Were they, or is that?
Yes. You would,
So who made those?
Yeah.
The local,
Goldsmith.
smithy? Oh, the goldsmith. So
Goldsmith or the
jeweler-
silversmith.
The jewelers.
The
would make
jewelers
it.
would have made buttons,
Okay.
which is a testament to the wealth
Yeah.
Right.
that we have, because I have metal buttons
Right.
all the way down my sleeve.
Right,
So
that's a
your
lot of
family's
wealth.
considered middle class?
Upper middle class,
Upper
I
middle
am,
class.
the character that I portray is a wealthy merchant's wife.
So, would they ever make buttons out of wood?
Yes,
Yes.
wooden buttons, absolutely, anything that you can have a shank on, so you would, but with a wooden button, they would normally use a wooden bead, and then they would cover it in cord.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
And
yeah.
then you would use that, and that would be all stations.
Right,
Because if your tailor is making you your new silk doublet, he may or may not use the same thread and make you buttons that would be the same kind of cloth button. Or the old cloth button that's the round with a bit of fluff stuffed into it, and then it's a drawstring. Not recommended for our kind of clothing, but if you're a noble and you're not doing anything,
yeah.
you know, the nobles were the ones who could not have the high leather boots because I'm tramping around in things better
Yeah.
left in leather
Yeah.
boots.
Yeah.
But if I'm in the city and I'm in my townhome all the time, I'm wearing embroidered slippers
Yeah.
because I have the time to do the embroidery.
And you don't need the practical.
And I don't necessarily need the practical at that point. But if I'm gonna go outside, you better believe the embroidered slippers come off and the practical goes back on. Or they would wear a wooden shoe, and this is the precursor to the 1970s platforms. They would wear a wooden shoe that had a sole on it, that was a framework, and some of them, you look at them and go, man, heels look more comfortable.
Yeah.
And what it was is, if you're walking through 6 inches of muck,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
get
don't
everything.
want your shoes in the muck.
Or your skirts.
Your skirts. Now, skirts. The outer skirt is the one that would be less decorated than the underskirt. The underskirt, there were 2 reasons for that. You could cheat on the underskirt. You could have a panel, because trust me, he's cheap.
Guilty as charged.
He won't let me have a tailor make my clothes, because why should he pay for a tailor when I can do it myself? Even though he knows I hate to sew. But I also am cheap too, and don't wanna pay $2,500 to have somebody make something that I can make for $145. Yeah, I know, but we have professional costumers who I deal with and who've gone, yeah, you know, Mikey will be happy to make you clothes. Like, yeah, I haven't won the lotto yet. But the outer skirt was the one that would have been grubby. And you'll see I have a decorative panel that's up, more because it was a nod to there being an awful lot of gray. And I didn't want to weave another 6 yards of trim to go all the way around the bottom. So I just put the green, but what they would do is they would put a panel 6 inches, 8 inches from the bottom of the skirt up the side. And you can change the panel out without changing the skirt. And the underskirt, you would have that front panel, 4-part, and then you could have the cheap fabric
Yeah.
or the worn fabric underneath. Trust me, the nobles, land rich, entitled rich, monetarily wise, not so much. There was a lot of cost savings going on, but they had to maintain their status. They had to maintain their position, and you can always tell the status of someone
Yeah.
in my time by their clothes. So although he's a middle-class merchant, a peasant would bow to him, would reverence. And please note, thank you. Now, did you see what he did? Okay,
There we go.
thank you. If he doesn't tell me that, I can get up. If you are reverencing somebody above your station, and they ignore you, you have to wait for them to walk away, or you're stuck. But please note, when I did this, what is my back doing? Am I bowing? No. I'm English. I don't bow to anybody. I take a knee to the Queen. I take a knee to God. I take a knee to anybody who, which cracks me up about the whole NFL thing. Really, do you understand what you're doing? You're taking a knee. It doesn't mean what you think it means. It means that you are in abject, absolute, utter respect. Okay, go ahead, take that knee. So if I'm taking a knee to God, and the only person that is second to God is the Queen, I may take a knee to someone who I show utter respect for, but it's my personal choice. It is not my personal choice to reverence somebody who I know is above me in my station, because if they want to get real picky